all the big talk and rage is Trump at the Supreme Court. Okay, I know that Stormy Daniels is big news to everybody else. I don't think that's big news. Okay, big deal. He got a gag order, $9,000 fine for breaking a gag order. He can find change to pay that. He can shake out his couch cushions at Mar-a-Lago and pay that one off. But the immunity case at the Supreme Court, that is decisive. Because if he has immunity to do what he wants in 2016 to 2020, a whole lot of these court cases go away. Welcome to Doug in Exile. This is where the happy patriots are. I found a bunch of headlines. This will get you up to date on the biggest news regarding Trump's election. That's my only concern about all this is I want to get the guy elected. Here's 3 crummy headlines. This is The Hill. This one's an older headline, actually, but there's Lindsey Graham. Graham predicts Supreme Court will send Trump presidential immunity case to lower courts. That's true. That is what they think is there's so much back. Remember, Jack Smith pushed this court case up to the Supreme Court before he did let it go through the lower courts. And what lower courts do is they make smaller decisions. They build out, they put meat on the bone. And Jack Smith just went straight to the Supreme Court. They're probably going to send it back down to lower courts saying this stuff needs to be decided down at a lower level. So that's all Lindsey Graham is saying there. Most experts agree on that the Supreme Court does not want to make a giant sweeping decision on a thinly argued, narrow, unique. They hate unique. They hate creative with the law. That's not what they do. Here's Business Insider with Trump next to Kavanaugh. Law review by SCOTUS. Justice offers clue in Trump immunity case. And it really is Kavanaugh who likes presidential immunity. Next up, here's ABC News. Surprising and disturbing legal experts react to Supreme Court. Now, anytime ABC News is saying surprising and disturbing, it's good. It's good news for Trump. Because the internet went nuts when it looked like they weren't going to get the scalp they wanted from the Supreme Court. And this will backfire on Jack Smith. We got to put that guy in tears, in traction, and in therapy. Okay, not in traction. That implies physical harm to the guy. So this is at Slate Magazine, a liberal magazine. Keeping up with the Trump trial sure sounds like the Supreme Court is about to give Trump a big win. That title looks like it's in Cooper's bold font. We like that. Good news. Here we go. Last week, the Supreme Court considered the question of whether Donald Trump should be shielded from federal prosecution by presidential immunity. And a majority of the conservative justices seemed ready to side with the former president. Meanwhile, in New York, Trump's hush money trial is continued, with prosecutors for Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg introducing their first witness. Blah, blah, blah. We're going to skip over that. Supreme Court might grant Trump some immunity, and I'm with them on some immunity. You'll hear the liberals say absolute immunity, complete immunity, total immunity. He can go and shoot someone kind of immunity. And that's obviously not what the law is trying to protect. It obviously doesn't apply. So if you have to exaggerate to that level, what is reasonable immunity? How about Trump saying, I question these election results? Reasonable. Last week, the Department of Justice and Trump's lawyers argued over presidential immunity at the Supreme Court in a case that could make or break special counsel Jack Smith's federal election interference indictment. And after nearly 3 hours of oral arguments, a majority of justices seemed poised to give the former president a hugely consequential win. That's how adverbs, that's a weak adverb. Hugely, a very Trump adverb. Hugely. Thank you, the Slate. Hugely important win. Those sound as bad as my titles on my videos. John Sauer, Trump's attorney, argued the, quote, presidency as we know it, unquote, would be over if presidents were not granted immunity from criminal charges, claiming that vindictive prosecutors would target them for any controversial decisions made in office as soon as they leave it. That's the purpose of presidential immunity, by the way, is to keep the next guy from punishing you like a banana republic does. And that's very reasonable given the cases that we've seen come up against Trump. The Supreme Court are watching it happen in real time. If they say he doesn't have immunity, then they know that they're approving all five or six of these bogus lawsuits, and they will continue to politicize an election that should not be politicized in that way. Okay, and then the other side, Michael Dreeben, a lawyer representing Jack Smith's office, emphasized that the Supreme Court has never recognized absolute presidential immunity. See that? Absolute they bring in. How about just do they recognize presidential immunity? And they're going to try to make what Trump did seem absolute, seem like he was shooting a political opponent. Is how they are going to exaggerate his statement of peacefully go walk over, and that the Constitution already has multiple checks to prevent vindictive prosecution of a former chief executive. And I only want to say, if the Constitution already has those multiple checks, how are they working out right now? With Trump being sued politically, Alvin Bragg, Fonnie Willis, Letitia James, Judge Engeron, E. Jean Carroll, changing the law so that it opens back up this old ancient case she can't even remember, just so they can uniquely prosecute Trump. I think that is in the Supreme Court's face right now. They're aware of what's happening, and they're going to go, you're saying absolute presidential immunity, and how about just some regular, normal, same-o presidential immunity? The justices ultimately focused on whether a president's official acts could be criminally prosecuted. If so, what distinguishes official acts from private ones? Justice Brett Kavanaugh, a Trump appointee, suggested that prosecutors could only charge a former president under criminal statutes that explicitly state they can be applied to presidents, which Justice Sonia Sotomayor quickly pushed back on. Quote, if we say a president can't be included in a criminal law unless explicitly named, then that would bar the Senate from convicting him for high crimes or misdemeanors, unquote, she argued, because that means that Trump is not subject to the law at all. As Sotomayor has pointed out, there are only a tiny handful of criminal statutes today that explicitly name the president. In an analysis of today's oral arguments, states Dahlia Lithwick and Mark Joseph Stern explained that the court's conservative justices made it clear they disapproved of Smith's indictment of the former president. Quote, to at least 5 of the conservatives. Remember, we need just 5 of the 9. The real threat to democracy wasn't Trump's attempt to overturn the election, but the Justice Department's efforts to prosecute him for the act, unquote, they wrote. And that's all the good news you need on this one, guys. It's going our way. There's a little more frabba-jabba going on with Chief Justice Roberts because he really wants a 9-0 decision. He really wants complete unity by the whole court on this one. And he's got radicals, probably Sotomayor. This could be an 8-1 verdict, which again makes it look like, oh, it wasn't super convincing. So sometimes what they have to do is water down the statement to be more and more general to get all of the justices on board. Because even though they get a technical win, they really want to have a united win on this, because the legal theory should be clear to the Supreme Court justices. And I'm not familiar enough with the ins and outs of even what Sotomayor brought up to make that kind of a decision. I only know that Chief Justice Roberts wants unity on this one. Let me know what you guys think. Does Trump swing on this one? Does he get in trouble? Or do the conservative justices come out and say he has normal presidential immunity? I'm Doug in Exile.